Sunlight streamed through the towering courthouse windows, casting golden beams across the polished marble floor. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind of silence that weighs heavy before a storm. At the bench sat Judge Malcolm Hayes, tall, mid-40s, with an expression that rarely betrayed his inner thoughts. His reputation was one of fairness, dignity, and an unwavering belief in the power of justice. But on this particular morning, his composure faltered. When the defendant was led into the courtroom, chains clinking faintly against the floor, Malcolm's chest tightened. He recognized him instantly, though years had passed. Eli Thompson, once a boy with a wide smile and boundless dreams, now stood accused of armed robbery. The same Eli who had shared lunch with him under the shade of old oak trees, who once saved him from a beating behind the school gym. Childhood had drawn them together, life had driven them apart. Malcolm's gavel trembled slightly in his grip as the charges were read. The courtroom only heard words, guilty or innocent, evidence and testimony. But Malcolm heard echoes of laughter on playground swings, whispered promises of escaping their small, segregated town, and a brotherhood that once felt unbreakable. The prosecutor painted Eli as a hardened criminal, a danger to society. Yet all Malcolm could see was the boy who used to race him barefoot down dusty streets, who dreamed of becoming a teacher. Doubt and duty clashed violently inside him. Could this truly be the same person? Or was Eli another black man swallowed by a system that judged him long before any evidence was presented? The trial had just begun, but Malcolm already sensed that the outcome would test not only the law but his very soul. The case unfolded with precision. The prosecution brought forth witnesses, each one carefully rehearsed, their words sharpening the image of Eli as a man spiraling into crime. They spoke of a robbery gone wrong, of a store clerk terrified at gunpoint, of fingerprints that allegedly matched. To the jury, it all sounded airtight. But Malcolm, seasoned in the law, caught the cracks. A security camera that somehow malfunctioned at the exact moment of the crime. Testimony that contradicted itself in small but crucial ways. And an uncomfortable detail, Eli had no history of violence, no past arrests, not even a speeding ticket. The man before him did not fit the portrait being painted. Still, Eli sat there, shoulders heavy, eyes dim, his spirit weighed down by years of invisible battles. Malcolm saw more than evidence, he saw exhaustion. He recognized the look, one he'd seen countless times before, the look of a black man tired of being presumed guilty long before he is proven innocent. In a quiet moment during recess, Malcolm's mind drifted back to their childhood. He remembered Eli's voice, steady and hopeful, saying, "One day, Mal, we'll be somebody. We won't let them tell us who we are." Those words now echoed like a haunting prophecy. The weight of the robe pressed harder on Malcolm's shoulders. Judges were supposed to be impartial, guided only by the law. But was justice truly blind? Or did it see color all too clearly? Each time he looked at Eli, Malcolm felt a collision between his oath to the court and his loyalty to truth. He feared that what he was truly witnessing was not justice, but a familiar injustice dressed in legal language. The defense attorney rose, her voice steady yet strained. She argued passionately that Eli was innocent, that he had been targeted because of where he lived, because of how he looked. She spoke of the pattern, the way young black men were often swept into the system with little more than circumstantial evidence. But the jury's eyes wandered, their faces blank, as if they had already made up their minds. Then came Eli's chance to speak. He stood, his shackled hands trembling slightly as he faced the courtroom. "I didn't do this," he said, his voice raw with conviction. "I was home that night, taking care of my mother. She's sick. She needs me. I've never hurt anyone in my life." His words were not dramatic, not rehearsed, but honest. Malcolm's chest tightened again. This was not the voice of a liar. This was the same boy who once vowed to never let the world break him. Yet here he stood, shackled like a criminal, fighting for his very existence in a system designed to disbelieve him. The prosecutor smirked, brushing off Eli's plea as desperation. But Malcolm noticed the jury shift uneasily. For the first time, doubt crept into the room. The silence that followed was heavy, stretching across the polished wood and cold marble, pressing on everyone present. Inside, Malcolm was fighting a war. He was the judge, not the advocate, and yet his heart screamed for him to intervene. He could not erase what he knew about Eli's character. He could not pretend the flaws in the case were invisible. And he could not ignore the deep, gnawing fear that if he failed to act, he would be complicit in the quiet destruction of another black man's life. The tension reached a breaking point when Eli's mother was called to the stand. Frail and leaning heavily on a cane, she spoke in a trembling voice. "My son was with me that night," she said, looking directly at the jury. "He was making tea for me, reading me passages from the Bible. He never left my side." Tears glistened in her eyes, not of performance, but of truth and desperation. The courtroom shifted uncomfortably. Some jurors looked down, unable to meet her gaze. The prosecutor tried to shake her testimony, suggesting confusion or memory lapses due to her illness. But her words carried the weight of a mother's certainty, a bond unshaken by doubt. Malcolm felt the room's energy change. He watched Eli bow his head, shoulders trembling, not in guilt, but in gratitude. For the first time, he seemed to believe that perhaps the truth might prevail. Yet Malcolm knew too well how quickly truth could be silenced. He had seen cases where mothers cried for sons who were still condemned. He had seen evidence twisted, humanity ignored. And he knew the jury would soon retreat behind closed doors, where prejudice often whispered louder than facts. As the day ended, Malcolm lingered in his chambers, staring at the framed oath on his wall. To uphold justice, without fear or favor. He whispered the words to himself, almost bitterly. What did justice mean if the system itself was poisoned? That night, he did not sleep. He saw Eli's face in his dreams, not as a defendant, but as a boy chasing freedom in dusty fields. A boy who once believed the world was theirs to claim. The verdict day arrived. The courtroom was filled to the brim, the weight of expectation pressing down on every soul inside. Eli stood tall despite his chains, his eyes searching Malcolm's face one last time, as though silently asking for recognition, not as a defendant, but as the friend he once knew. The jury filed in, expressions unreadable. Time slowed. Malcolm's heartbeat pounded like a drum in his ears. The foreman rose and delivered the words that could shatter or restore a life. Not guilty. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Eli's mother wept openly, her frail body trembling with relief. Eli closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face, his chest heaving as though he had been holding his breath for years. Justice, true justice, had prevailed, at least this time. Malcolm exhaled silently, his grip tightening on the gavel. He had not spoken out loud, but his presence, his steady hand in guiding the trial, had mattered. For once, the system had not devoured an innocent man. As Eli was released from his chains, he looked up at Malcolm. Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment, the years melted away. No words were exchanged, none were needed. Malcolm saw gratitude, resilience, and an unbroken spirit. And Eli saw not just a judge, but the boy he once knew, still standing with him. The courtroom emptied, but Malcolm remained seated, staring at the bench. He knew that today's victory was fragile, rare. There were countless others who would not be so fortunate. But in that moment, he vowed to carry the memory of this trial as both a burden and a beacon, a reminder that justice is not a gift, but a fight. And sometimes, that fight begins with the courage to see someone not as the world condemns them, but as they truly are.